Well, it's the problem. There's more to it than that, and Perry will tell you what for. He'll give you what for on it. I want to thank you for coming this evening. This is the maybe 6th or 7th of the Audubon programs at the library. And normally I am the one who does them, and I'm Heidi from the Audubon Center. But today I've been very fortunate to be able to talk Perry Vogel from the Purple Martin Association at the Dakotas to come over here from across the river and do this presentation on urban myths about purple martins and how to attract them. And if do you have purple martin houses? Yeah. And neither one of you two had one, right? But you've had one. This is not anymore because of the tree. Anyway, Perry's going to explain what you need to do and how to go about doing it, and you will become super successful, I guarantee it. Hi there. So Perry, come on over. Come on over and do your thing.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to welcome you here. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for your interest in purple martins. The one thing I want to point out before we get too far into a presentation is, being a purple martin landlord is a responsibility, and it's a privilege that these birds come to your yard. And sometimes we have to deal with things that aren't very glamorous, and some things that aren't very fun to deal with. I'm going to dedicate this presentation to a coworker of mine who lost his life last week in a tragic accident. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I talked to him not too long ago about purple martins, and he was just interested in it. And that's what we need, is people who are interested in helping purple martins. And with that, I present urban myths about attracting purple martins. First part of the presentation, I'm going to kind of talk about some birds that are confused with purple martins often. If you have purple martins, you're not confusing these birds, but a lot of the public just doesn't know what a purple martin is because there are so very few of them. The one thing that I've found out is that people will assume that what they have is purple martins, and in reality they don't have purple martins even in their yard at all. So I'm going to give you a few identification tips that can help you when you're talking to people who might be thinking that they have purple martins. And the first one I'm going to talk about is the brown-headed cowbird. The brown-headed cowbird is about the size of an English house sparrow. It's mostly finch-like. If you look at the body structure, it looks very much like the purple finch, even the goldfinch. And it has kind of a finch-like beak. The two distinguishing features on the brown-headed cowbird are that it has a dark eye and a brown head. Now the female is completely brown, but you can see the iridescence on the brown-headed cowbird. It's kind of got a purpley sheen. So people who are not familiar with purple martins and their habitat may confuse a brown-headed cowbird with that. If you'll notice, it's sitting on a deck. You'll very rarely see a purple martin sitting on a deck. That's going to be a rare occasion. Brown-headed cowbirds evolved on the backs of buffaloes, and they were a nomadic bird. So they nested in other birds' nests, such as the western meadowlark, any of the larks that nest on the ground, chipping sparrows. And what they do is they dump one egg into a nest and they abandon it. They don't raise their own young. Brown-headed cowbirds are a native species, so there's not much that we can do with them, but what we can do is we can discourage them from nesting in our yards just by being there and being present. And brown-headed cowbirds aren't necessarily a competitor purple martin, but they are very numerous, as we see in North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, and parts of Minnesota. So they will come in early spring, and they will, oftentimes you'll see them in larger flocks, maybe of 25, and they'll be sitting on the tops of your houses warming themselves. Next bird I'd like to talk about is the brewer's blackbird. This bird is also one that's very iridescent, has a purplish sheen to it, quite often found in suburban areas. This one happens to be sitting on a rock, but most of them that I see are usually sitting on your deck or on trees or sidewalks. The one distinguishing feature about the Brewer's blackbird is that staring yellow eye, and if you ever see them on the lawn, you'll see that they will walk with a kind of a jerk. Brewer's blackbirds are native to this area as well, and I'll show you the map on that. Mostly populated in the western part of the United States, but it does spill over into North Dakota and Minnesota. Brewer's blackbirds are very similar to the cowbird in that they will come in early spring, warming themselves on your decks. They will feed in your gardens, in your lawn, and they are, as you can see, quite populous as well, just by the color of the egg. This is the common grackle, probably everybody's favorite bird, right?
Yes, it's my favorite.
Yes, because of what it does in your bird bath, on your sidewalk, on your deck. These are probably one of the most disgusting birds that we have in an urban setting. Unfortunately, they're very messy with droppings. The distinguishing feature on the common grackle is once again that yellow piercing eye and its longer tail and longer legs. As you'll see from that earlier slide, the Brewer's blackbird and the common grackle are very similar. The common grackle is a little bit bigger, a little bit more robust. Common grackles eat, they do eat quite a few insects, but they also eat a lot of farmers' crops, and they eat actually quite a lot of garbage, and that isn't something that's very well documented. But if you ever drive by a fast food restaurant, you'll see some of the common grackle, in addition to some of the bigger birds like the ravens and the crows. And on the next slide, you'll see that the common grackle is very common. That's probably where it got its name. I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't wish that the common grackle was having the same problems as the purple martin, just because it is such a messy bird, and the purple martin gets a bad reputation because of its growth. Oh, the beloved starling. Another bird that isn't very beloved. The European starling was introduced into the United States in 1850 by Shakespearean enthusiasts who thought it would be nice to release every bird that was mentioned in Shakespeare's work. Unfortunately, the European starling is a ruthless killer of native species of birds such as purple martin, eastern bluebird, tree swallow, any cavity nesting bird. They'll eat their eggs, they'll eat their young. They will nest great in the same nest as those other native species. European starlings have been known to kill adult purple martins. And the distinguishing feature on the European starling that sets it apart is that piercing yellow bill. That is the way you can really identify which birds you're seeing. If you see a bird that has a piercing yellow bill, you can look, fairly quickly. That bill is what's going to set this bird apart from the purple martin or any of the other native species. Like I mentioned earlier, they were introduced into the United States, so they are a non-native species, which means that the federal government doesn't protect them at all. So you are allowed to remove their nests, their eggs, and actually euthanize the birds themselves. And as you will see from the map, they are very one of the things I don't think I mentioned is in the 50 years after they were introduced into the United States, so up to 1900, they had grown in population to reach coast to coast, from New York all the way over to San Francisco. the one thing I wanted to point out is in the Chicago area, it seems like they came in through the trail. So I would really dislike being in any one of those areas. And on the next map, you will see that, or one of the following maps, you'll see that purple martins are populations have suffered in those areas. And here we get to the purple martin. These are the birds that we are talking about today. On this display, or on this picture, you will see an adult male, which is all purple, and he has, their feathers actually black. And what makes them purple is the iridescence from the sunlight. So, like most birds, such as the bluebird, which has a brown-based feather, and the blue that shows on a bluebird is an iridescence from the reflection of the sun. The female in this picture actually looks to me like a second-year female, and you can tell that by this lower part of her tail, which almost looks completely white. The female has a dingy gray bottom, but the adult females have a dingy gray undertail as well. So you can tell the sexes and ages of purple martins just by looking at their feather type. Now I have to explain a little bit about purple martins and their aging, because they actually go through different phases. The first year that a male fledges, or young bird fledges, they all pretty much look like this female here, with very light colors. They'll migrate all the way down to Brazil and come back. And when they come back, if they are a male, they will have a few purple feathers somewhere on their chest or on their undertail. And I think of that as a teenager growing some hair. So that's how you can tell if it's a first-year male or an adult male. Now, after that second year, they will look like that deep purple all over. And they classify them as after second year, which is an adult, and a second year, which is just a purple martin that has gone down south once and come back. And on this map, you will see, when I talked about the Chicago area and the starling, you'll see that they're very lightly colored. This is the map to show how populous the purple martin is. And you will see in north of South Dakota on the western side of the state, they don't even really show up. I have been contacted by a man in Dickinson, North Dakota, and he's told me that he has breeding purple martins. And Dickinson, up until just a few years ago, has never really had any reported purple martins. So we're really excited that we can see the ranges at least expanding in parts of North Dakota. Three things I want to point out: up in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba. Winnipeg, Manitoba has had a active purple martin conservation group going for 30 years, and in both Alberta and Saskatchewan, they have cities that have purple martin festivals, and they have groups that are taking care of them. Minnesota does as well, and I don't think this map has really caught up with the science, but one of the reasons why we want to help the purple martins in this area is they have declined 78% in the last, I believe it is since 1966. So we don't know why that is. Partially, we think it's because of the competition from the English house sparrow and the European starling. Partially, there aren't enough landlords that will take care of them. Everyone's very busy. The Purple Martin Conservation Association, they're out of Erie, Pennsylvania, and they put these maps together every spring, and where landlords across the country can report when they see their first purple martin. So early in, sometimes late December, even in late December, early January, you'll see that the tip of Florida will start to become colored. and it'll just gradually move up, move up, move up. Now the yellow points on that map are what they call the second year migration. Now those are the males that were just hatchlings last year. And the reason why they just study the males is because the females are very difficult to determine because you have to look at that undertail. Whereas the male, you will be able to see those purple feathers very easily. So this map was current as of May 2nd, and I had not seen any second year males of that date, but on the 18th of May, I had my first second year male showing. Now going back to how did purple martins evolve? Why are purple martins dependent on humans for hunting? Back several thousand years ago is when that traditional shift actually started. Purple martins' natural habit or habitat for nesting was tree snag. Basically, forests that had burned where woodpeckers had pecked holes into the tree. And so the woodpeckers probably were either nesting there or they had were looking for food. And purple martins would nest in these tree snags, and they became a community. So they were safe from predators because, you know, after a fire, there's not very many predators around. And when back in the day when Native Americans settled the United States, they had discovered that purple martins were naturally curious. They had used gourds that were similar to this, but grown in their garden, as watering containers. So they would hang these gourds up by their watering holes. Purple martins were curious about these things, and sooner or later they had noticed that they had nested. Once that happened, the Native Americans also discovered that purple martins didn't like crows very much. So the union began because crows were notorious for invading the Native American drying fields where they would dry their meat for the winter. So purple martins would chase away those crows, and they were a natural insectivore, which would they thousands of thousands of insects. So they became partners that way. And eventually they started making a traditional shift into human supply housing, because as the European settlers moved to the United States, they started to cut down these tree snags because they thought they were ugly and didn't really realize that they were being used for anything. So they cut them down, used them for firewood, used them for clean farming, cleared out the area for clean farming. Urban development gobbled up a lot of these tree snags and whatever else they used the lumber for. Once they had cut them down, though, the European settlers had noticed that the Native Americans had known that these the Native Americans had told the European settlers that they had been tracking the purple martins. Well, the European settlers basically started putting up wooden houses. Not as fancy as this one, but that opened up, but they were of course smaller units, and they'd put up a house and they would paint them white. White was a very important color to the Europeans. We have a white house as our nation's capital. So that was just the default color that represented the New World. And sooner or later, once the tree snags were gone, the purple martins had made that traditional shift to only human supplied housing. This is the modern day version of a tree snag. People putting up purple martin houses. And this particular house is made out of aluminum, and it goes up and down on a hinged pulley. And the one thing that I want to mention about this house is the shape of the hole. You will notice that that half-moon shape, what that's called is a Magulin crescent, and it prevents it prevents European starlings from invading the purple martin nest. And if you are starting a colony in this area, I would recommend that you would start the colony with the crescent-shaped entrance holes. And the reason I do that is because the European starling is so invasive and so destructive to your purple martin. And as you'll see on both of my examples that I brought in here, I use the crescent shapes. Going back a little bit, why are purple martins so important? Purple martins are extraordinarily effective. So that means they eat only insects, and they only eat on the wing. So if you've got, anything big, ugly flying in your backyard, you can reduce that insect population by housing purple martins. In this nest, what we use is a little bit of straw, and the type of straw that I used was just a certified weed-free straw that you can get at a pet supply store or horse feed store. And basically, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to take you step by step on how to attract martins. First thing is they are not the most ambitious bird anymore because they had already been using woodpecker cavities as nests previously. So we want to make the nest available to them so that it looks like it's been used. A perfectly clear house isn't going to attract as many purple martins as one that looks used. We're going to fool them into believing that it was used by a purple martin because it just makes them feel a little more secure. So purple martins' nests are basically flat. They're just flat sticks arranged just in a shallow bowl. So I just put about an inch worth of straw in that nest. And then I topped it off with some cedar dog bedding. Once again, that's something you can get at a pet supply store or hamster bedding. A lot of people aren't too fond of the cedar dog bedding. It has some natural insecticide properties in it, and I find that it's a really good supplement to add to the nest. One of the reasons is when the young start defecating in the nest, purple martins will take that fecal sac out, and it'll often have one of these little flakes stuck to it. So it just really keeps the nest really clean, and it helps to reduce nest parasites such as bird fleas and bird lice. Once I've put a nest together, I do mudding, and I take a paint stick and I fill up a bucket, a half gallon full of garden dirt, and make a brownie batter, consistently mixed. Load up that paint stick and I stick it in the hole with the nest box closed. And I dump over that mud and I scrape it off. What that does is it simulates a mud dam. Purple martins use mud dams to kind of protect their nests from predators. And if they see that kind of a mud dam, they're more likely going to start staying at your site if they're scouting out your site. Back on Earth Day, I set up the martin house that I had pictured previously, and I didn't do the mudding technique right that day. I waited almost 2 weeks, and I knew the martins were back. I put the mud in on Sunday night, and on Monday morning I had martins that were staying. So it was pretty exciting. This was my colony in Grand Forks up until a few weeks ago. I reduced the size of my colony because I'm trying to spread into the community. And I had 34 units at this site, 6 gourds, which are like this, and the purple martin house is a stack of them. So each of these each of these sections is 4 of them. And these basically bolt together from side to back, and they wrap around a Schedule 40 steel pole. On the top of that pole I have a pulley, and on the bottom of that pole I have a pulley. And I have 2 pulleys in there because I didn't want any cables on the outside of that pole clanging right there. So the cable actually runs on the inside of that pole. And on the bottom there's a winch and a boat winch basically, so that you can raise and lower that house. And this right here is just a perching tree, someplace for them to sit. Purple martins were known for sitting on wires and TV antennas, and we have now gone to satellite TV, cable TV, and underground wiring. So I didn't have any overhead wires in my neighborhood, so I put up a perching tree. And you can see they quite enjoy it. Purple martins are different than other backyard birds in that you typically don't feed them. And I say that with some reservation because some people are feeding purple martins. They will take spoons and they will flick crickets into the air. And I'm thinking that's a little bit ambitious for me, and it's probably kind of expensive. I'm a little bit of a advocate for natural selection, and the reason why they do feed purple martins is because they've arrived too early and we get a cold snap. Since purple martins are insectivores, that means that the insects have to be active in order for them to eat. They eat exclusively on the wing, which means they have to be flying. So when it's 35 degrees, there are no flying insects. So the purple martins are just sitting there. In this particular feeding tray, call it a feeding tray, I have eggshells and oyster shells and sand. Those 3 supplements help the purple martins with their digestion. The eggshells and the oyster shells help with the calcium level, and sand helps with their gizzards and allows them to grind up the insects that they eat. In this particular picture, it was all males that were sitting there, and the one behavior that's really interesting about purple martins is the pair bond that they create. They create a pair bond in the spring, and they are united for that year. And once they've made that pair bond, the male will escort his female to a tray like this so that they can eat or ingest some of the oyster shells. And they do that to protect their female from other male attacks. One of the things about purple martins that makes them just extraordinary is their flight. They are incredible at aerial acrobats. As you can see from this picture, he's obviously got his concentration on something and is turning. And that's what you see from a distance when you have a purple martin colony in your yard. Purple martins have a feeding style of a hawker. And what that means is that they will be flying around when they spot an insect,